Hello. Thank you for joining me in my studies today. This is day 4, reading favorite quotes from Alan Watts, The Meaning of Happiness. In the case that you'd like to see more details about the book, I've included a link in the notes.
Indeed, it is as if we carried inside of us an exact duplicate of the world we see around us. For the world is a mirror of the soul, and the soul a mirror of the world. Therefore, when you learn to feel the unconscious, you begin to understand not only yourself, but others as well. Acceptance is the philosopher's stone that turneth all to gold. It means putting our consciousness in the very core of whatever pain falls upon us, and allowing that pain to do its worst. As to our reaction to the pain, the same principle applies, for we allow the demon that wishes to scream, protest, and swear all freedom to have its way. As often as not, it does not need it, for the very act of granting it the freedom is in itself a relief. You cannot begin to control emotions unless you first let yourself be free to use them, and the difficulty of keeping them within reasonable bounds is increased by merely repressive control. For this reason, there are thousands of supposedly well-educated people who behave worse than children when moved by powerful emotion, having no understanding and above all no love for the feminine in themselves. It seems to be necessary to try to discover the secret by going somewhere in order to learn that this can never be done. The path always takes you round in a circle back to the place where you stand. It is a symptom of our spiritual phlegmatism and torpidity that the dance is no longer a part of our ritual, and that we worship in churches which, as often as not, resemble cattle pens where people sit in rows and pray by leaning forward in their seats and mumbling. Sometimes people try to get away from the stiffness by putting on short pants and running out to the woods for community dancing and the cultivation of response to nature. And there are other people who try to make their prayers sincere by groveling on their knees and whimpering. This is another case of trying to make the tail wag the dog. The first essential is to feel the joy. The response follows of its own accord, but you cannot get the joy by slavishly imitating the response. Self-deception, no trick of reason or science, no magic, no amount of self-reliance can make us independent of the universe and enable us to escape its destructive aspect. Pain is a fact, and no amount of wishful theology could explain it away with promises and apologies for its existence in a universe whose God is supposed to be love. At the same time, no amount of acceptance can make away with our fundamental horror of pain in its more extreme forms. But even so, faith can never be real faith if it is half-hearted, if we think that it is merely a question of the best policy, of the best means to make an intolerable situation a little more bearable. We are a collection of people running wildly around in circles in frantic pursuit of our own selves. And the picture is not particularly edifying. Yes, if we could see ourselves from a psychological standpoint, we should think we had walked into Bedlam. We should see men running away from their shadows, men trying to jump off the ground by tugging at their shoelaces, men trying to see their own eyes and kiss their own lips. It is like trying to mend a hole in one part of a handkerchief by taking a patch from another. For the trouble is that all our schemes, systems, and devices are partial. It is as if we ourselves were the hole in the handkerchief. We see some other part of the handkerchief and think how pleasant it would be to fill our emptiness by acquiring it. So we cut it out and fill ourselves, only to find that we are now the new hole, the invisible blind spot in the universe. The grace of God is offered freely to all, but through pride, man will not accept it. He cannot bear the thought that he is absolutely powerless to lift himself up, and that the only chance of salvation is simply to accept something which is offered as freely to the saint as to the sinner. If nothing can be done to earn this grace, It seems to set all man's self-imposed ideals at naught. He has to confess himself impotent, and this is more than he can bear. So the gift of grace is tacitly ignored, and man goes on trying to manufacture it for himself. If another paradox may be forgiven, true acceptance is accepting yourself as you are now, at this moment, before you have even begun to make yourself different by accepting yourself. We see God every time we open our eyes. We inhale Him at every breath. We use His strength in every movement of a finger. And we think Him in every thought, although we may not think of Him. And we taste Him in every bite of food. This is an old story to those who have studied the wisdom of the East, but still the search goes on. A search for something we've never lost, something which is staring us right in the face. A search which the Buddhists sometimes describe as hiding loot in one's pocket and declaring oneself innocent. It happens that the very thing we are forever struggling to get away from, to outgrow, to change, and to escape, is the very thing which holds the much desired secret. That is why there is a vicious circle, why our search for happiness is this frantic running around, pursuing in ignorance that which we are trying to flee. We are running away from our front in order to catch up with our back, with the result that for us, happiness is always somewhere in the future, just around the corner perhaps, but always beyond. Maya is not illusion as against reality, for in the Vedantist conception, there is nothing apart from reality which may be set over against it. Thus, we may say that while there is no actual separateness from Brahman, there is certainly an experience of separateness, and this experience is real, even though it is incomplete and relative. Maya is therefore only translatable as illusion in regard to the actual existence of separateness from Brahman. But as the experience of separateness, Maya is creative power, for that experience is the device whereby Brahman manifests himself as creatures who act on their own initiative. Say that all things are Brahman is another way of saying that all things are to be accepted, even non-acceptance, we must add, if our non-dualism is to be thorough. Man is always bound so long as he depends for his happiness on a partial experience. Joy must always give way to sorrow, otherwise it can never be known as joy. But the experience whole has no opposite. All the pairs of opposites exist in it, and therefore it may be described as the total acceptance of experience as we know it now, at this and at every moment. There's no greater freedom than the freedom to be what you are now. Thank you for joining me in my studies today. I'll look forward to sharing more tomorrow. It will be my last day of reading favorite quotes from this wonderful book, Alan Watts, The Meaning of Happiness.